Hello YouTube, hello Internet, Cyrix Guy here. I wanted to take a moment to share some interviewing advice, and this is applicable to any type of position, whether it's a starter job or maybe a huge upward move within an existing company. Now there's a few things to remember, and one thing, most importantly, before even beginning the job hunt, always ensure that your resume is current, and I would suggest an AP style, Associated Press style format for the resume. It seems to work really well. It's easy to maintain. And one thing I would always recommend doing is keeping your resume current. If you are jumping among positions within the same company, if you transition between, if you transition among multiple companies, keep all of those bullets in there because you might forget what exactly you did in the previous role. And the goal of the resume should not be to be 100%, paragraphs and paragraphs of information for each past experience. No, you want to summarize it because a summary says, okay, this guy's got something to talk about. And during your interview, that will enable one to expand upon, excuse me, the summary, the summarized items that they included in their resume. So make it short and sweet. It's a quick way to sell yourself because most people, most hiring managers, especially nowadays with the economy like it is, most hiring managers don't want to take the time to decipher all of that. They want to see the bullets. They want to see if a candidate even meets the criteria that they have in their mind to even be worth their time to interview. So make it really effective. Once you have your resume together, check for jobs that meet your skill set. Well, maybe there's a position that you feel that you're 80% comfortable with performing that job on a daily basis. Well, maybe you should apply, but maybe you should apply and be aware of the fact that when you're interviewed, that some of those skills you don't have. If a lot of online application sites or screening sites, I guess you should say, like Career Builder, Monster.com, Dice.com, all of that, a lot of the companies that participate in those require applicants to complete some form of preliminary quiz before they're even considered to be added into the interview pool. I mean, they may have thousands of candidates, but with this preliminary quiz, it'll help weed out the people that lack the most basic skills required to perform that job, and then they can narrow the search down more by actually looking at the applicants' resumes and determining which applicants from that pool that passed the preliminary quiz they would like to interview. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of steps to this process. So you've got your interview current, and it's summarized, preferably Associated Press style format, short and to the point. You've got your, you know what you're looking for job-wise. You know what your own skills are. If you don't know that, you're going to really have a problem because you got to know what you're capable of doing. And like I said, just because you don't have everything, that's an opportunity for growth. So it can actually be perceived as a positive. One that blatantly lies and says, "Oh, I have 100% of job knowledge for job XYZ." They're going to be less well perceived. They're probably not even going to be considered for the position actually, than a person that comes in and says, "You know what? I have like 60% of this, but I did have 10% of experience in a previous job with that, and a little bit with this, but I'm willing to learn. You know, what types of internal job on the job training might you offer? Do you have a boot camp you could send me off to? You know, I'm really interested in this." And one thing before the interview that I'd also like to recommend is pick out what you're going to wear. It doesn't matter what the job is. Wear a suit. Wear a suit, a shirt, and a tie. Nothing tacky. Basic colors, black, gray, whatever. Just a basic suit, a white shirt, and a tie that doesn't look tacky. Because anything, if you're wearing if you're wearing a black or a blue suit or gray suit and a white shirt, you can make pretty much any tie match that. So just put that on. People that show up for a job interview underdressed, oftentimes they're not considered, and the reason being is that if one doesn't even take the time to wear a suit to an interview, which is before they even have a job, if one doesn't even take the time to do that, what's to say that when something comes up within the job itself that that person's going to make the effort to to dress to impress? They're probably not. So that's why, that's at least my opinion as to why the wearing a suit to the interview, regardless of what type of job it might be, wearing a suit to the interview is always important because it shows that you can be prepared for anything. So now, when you're in the interview, one thing that I recommend, and I've been involved with the interviewing process both as hiring manager and interviewee, person being interviewed. And one thing to remember is that you're not there. You're okay. They're kind enough to give you X amount of time out of their day to interview you, and they at least think enough about you on paper to take time out of their day to talk to you and see if you might be a fit for the company. One thing to always remember when you interview, this is not a job. Because if someone's coming in for a job, there's tons of people that would want a job. Why this is important is that someone coming in for a career, if the company takes the time to consider you, if the company takes the time to possibly make you an offer, they don't really want someone to come in and then leave. They want someone that they can groom and continue to bump up the ladder within the organization. Because someone that understands the lowest level of work within an organization can then not only understand the upper levels as they grow, but they'll have a better understanding of how everything's built. Because if you know things from the ground up, let's just use some sort of screw. Let's say a place that manufactures screws. Well, if you know how to make a screw, then the next step might be how to use that screw to build a helicopter. But you got to know how to make the screw to screw it into a helicopter and make that part of the helicopter. Well, the next step might be the avionics. How do you fly the helicopter? How do you put the computer systems in there to enable a pilot to navigate the helicopter? So it just kind of goes up. So in the future, someone that started as a screw builder for a helicopter company, in the future, they might easily be overseeing the entire assembly of that helicopter. But they can better do it if they knew how to make the screw it together, put in the avionics, etc. I know this is a ridiculous example, but it's what a lot of companies are looking for today. They're looking for talent that they can retain. They don't want to waste time with somebody that's just in for a job hop. Oh, this might be a decent paycheck. You know what? I'll get what I want out of this and just hop somewhere else. They would probably prefer not to have that. So keep in mind when applying, as the interviewee, when applying for a position, before you apply, think to yourself, is this a company that I would feel comfortable dedicating my career path to? And if you as an individual don't feel that it's something that'll provide long-term career potential, then you might not want to apply, because number one, you're doing a favor for yourself. Number two, you're doing the company that's interviewing you a great favor by not wasting their time. And just something to consider there. Now, let's get into the actual interview. There's going to be a series of questions. There's interviewers that are very full of themselves. They know everything, and they try to make you feel stupid. There's interviewers that will act like they're very not knowledgeable at all when it comes to a certain topic, but it's an act. They're doing that to see if you will fall into that trap, and if your answers will be incorrect, but try to seem convincing because you're playing on what you perceive as their lack of knowledge. More than likely, and always remember this, unless the interviewing task has been delegated by a company to someone outside of that particular function, more than likely that person conducting the interview is very knowledgeable on all topics that they would discuss during an interview. It would be highly unlikely for someone conducting an interview to create questions that they're going to ask during an interview that they themselves would not be able to completely answer 100% correctly. So keep that in mind. Don't fall into that trap. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to ask questions. Answer what is asked. And if there's the opportunity to do it, for example, the company that makes screws for a helicopter might say, "Have you ever been in a helicopter?" And that's kind of a crazy statement. I mean, a crazy question rather. Have you ever been in a helicopter? Maybe you haven't. So one way to respond to that would be like, well, I've never been in a helicopter, but what I did do is I made this board for this model rocket, and it enabled it to fly in a certain path, and it was a really cool project. And then kind of elaborate on that. So even though it's not directly linked to the task at hand that this company performs daily, what your job would become if you were hired, at least it's something that says, hey, this guy hasn't done exactly what we do, but he seems to be pretty smart because he developed a navigational system for a model rocket. So it's a matter of what the company's like. I mean, are they willing to consider someone that may not have verbatim what they're looking for on paper, but if someone has equal if not better skills for different applications, maybe they'd want them because maybe they can train that person. They're like, well, God, this person's going to be smarter than our people that have been doing these helicopters for 30 years. So keep that in mind. Don't sell yourself short. Don't go into an interview. The worst trap that a lot of people can fall into is when they're applying for a job and the interviewer asks these questions and it's just the interviewee, you person being interviewed, you don't answer I mean, it's either yes, you say yes or no, and there seems to be lack of enthusiasm or lack of knowledge there. So you can put a spin on anything. You can put a spin, like I said, if you don't have the verbatim, no, I do not know how to put screws into a helicopter. If you don't have that, tell something else. Show your interest and show your willingness to learn. And that'll mean a lot. To most hiring managers, that'll mean a lot. So, keep all of these tricks in mind. Now, I've got a lot more. This is just the surface of the interview. Things to avoid. There shouldn't be any questions about religion or if you're married or stuff like that. And don't bring that stuff up. I mean, that's not for an interview, especially nowadays with how cutthroat our system is as far as that kind of stuff. I would just completely avoid that. But what I would do is you can get a feel during the interview from the hiring manager or it might just be the person conducting the interview if it was delegated the interviewer. But you can get a feel for them if they like you or not. And one thing that if you get that feeling of connection there, what you can then do after they've answered they're going to ask you all of these questions, and after they've asked you their canned set of questions, whatever those questions may be, they're probably then going to say, well, is there anything you'd want to add or anything you'd like to ask? So what I would recommend is then bringing up, if it wasn't already asked during the questions, I would then recommend bringing up any items of interest that might have been on the actual job description. When you applied for the job, what all did it have on there? Well, maybe there's some bullet points on there that didn't come up in the interview already. Ask questions about those. That shows not only are you interested, but that shows that you understand what you're applying for because you took the time to read that job description before you applied. You're 100% knowledgeable as to what the job entails, at least on paper, and you want to find out more. Now, if you have special requests, especially if you're applying for a job and you feel like you're getting there, you feel like you've made that connection, and they seem to be seriously considering you as a candidate, keep in mind, you don't want to seem like you've got too many needs, but ask some specific questions. Is there on-call? Well, how does on-call work? Do we have people that we share the on-call responsibilities for? Get all of that straightened out. Ask about if it hasn't already been discussed or it's not available on their website. Ask about benefits. Benefits are important. Ask about and the benefits, those medical benefits, maybe a stock option with the company. Those are all important. Also, time off. How much time off do you get per year? Do you have that when you start? If not, maybe there's a way to negotiate that into your package if they decide to hire you. Address all those things up front, because the worst thing is to accept something that that you could have gotten more when you when you applied for it. You forgot to ask some key questions there. And the other thing is that's really important is, well, if they at the end of the interview they may say, well, this position we've got 3 or 4 very solid candidates. We like you, but we feel that candidate A, B, and C might be a better fit, but we're still interested. Would you be willing to consider a job such as this? And then they provide you a job title and information about it instead. Now keep in mind, what they might offer you is something that you don't want. I mean, it may seem a lot lower than what you applied for, but that could be a trick question, because they might be asking that because they want to see, hey, is this person willing to in essence take a step backwards to move forward? And what that means is, well, would this person be willing to learn how to manufacture the screws for the helicopter again before getting that avionics design position, which is like in our example, dummy, silly scenario earlier, there was a job between those two. So always remember that a step backwards to move forward is sometimes important, because it might be a position where someone is hired for the screwmaker position, and then a week or 2 after that they say, hey, we've got this avionics position open, are you interested in that? So you never know, it could be a test. There's a lot of mind games with this stuff, and some of these people are really covert with their techniques, but some of these people, it's easy to read through them. So just try your best to analyze their body language, the questions they ask. Look for possible trick questions embedded in those questions. I mean, there's all kinds of techniques that these people use, but in closing, the most important thing that I would recommend as an interviewee, the person being interviewed, the most important thing I would recommend is, if you don't know something, don't sugarcoat it. Just stick to the facts. You don't know it, but I don't know this, but I do have this, and it can be unrelated. So throw that out there to throw the interest, to show that you have the extreme amount of interest in this job. Look for a career, not a job. What types of opportunities are available for me long term? What's career pathing look like for me within this company? Those types of things. Don't say if I get this job, because if you say if I get this job in any of your comments, that's implying that you're not 100% confident you're going to get the job. Now, you don't have to go in there and be cocky and say when I get this job, but avoid saying if I get this job. Don't, and again, that's another point. Don't come across as cocky, because people don't like cocky people for the most part. They're a hassle to deal with as a manager, and people would rather bring in someone that is willing to learn and embrace their existing procedures, and maybe provide some forms of innovation. Maybe there's some personal ideas that when hired that person could contribute to the company and really change the way that they do business for the better. So keep that in mind. And when you leave the interview, of course, always shake hands. Always shake hands with the interviewer, and then ask. Just be very very polite about it. Just be very direct, and just say how soon should I expect to hear, or better yet, not how soon should I expect to hear from you. Say, how soon do you expect to fill this position? And they may say, oh, it may take 3 weeks or months or whatever. And whatever time they give, whether it's a day, a week, a month, a year, whatever, just say, well, how soon should I expect to hear back from you? Just to show that extra amount of enthusiasm there. And I'm not an expert. I'm not involved with the human resources field, but I did want to share this with everyone in case it might be of value. And welcome your feedback, and feel free to check out my other videos on YouTube. Have a good one.